for me, my biggest kind of place of interest right now is um, giving men the tools to better navigate these realities because it kind of is what it is right now. Hopefully, it changes with the work you're doing and other people.
Hmm.
But one of the paradigms, and I brought this up with you when we kind of set this up, that I want to explore is the adored paradigm, adorer and the adored paradigm.
Hmm.
The I guess the theory was coined by Dr. Orion Taraban. He's also a YouTuber,
Hmm.
but he basically submitted that paradoxically, even though women say, and in modern context, are being socialized to be the star of the show, to be the star of the movie, to be the center of attention, they desperately crave to be the sidekick. Essentially, they desperately crave to have somebody worth pursuing, have somebody worth um, improving for, right? Rather than the other way around. Even though that's the story men are told. What's your position on that? How do you feel about that? How can men um, use that to refine themselves in a way that's going to make their mating and dating experience more seamless?
Yeah. So Dr. Orion, for the audience of people who haven't come across him, he's my favorite um, mental health person in the podcast space. I think that he's very reasonable. He's very balanced. He's very economic in how he
Yeah,
describes
yeah,
how
hundred
relationships are. He
percent.
even wrote a book on the economic components of relationships and how when people just are more honest and transactional, they know what each other is supposed to be giving and pursuing in terms of
Getting
the
yeah,
relationship. Yeah. So when I also came across this thing from him a few years ago when he started talking about the adored versus adorer side, a component of how to analyze relationships between men and women. And my initial stance is, although I agree with him, that no two people love each other equally, simultaneously, just as much. And there's
mm-hmm.
usually a push and pull effect. There's usually somebody who's always kind of, you know, pushing somebody up a little bit on the pedestal, so to speak, and the other person is kind of looking up, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I agree with them that women, generally speaking, don't do a great job of being in that pedestal spot and looking down at the man who's quote unquote pursuing them. They ideally want to be with the man who they can look up to and thus be led by. And it's very hard to look at a man who's not making great money, who isn't as smart, or who isn't smart and can't teach you nothing and is weaker than you. The idea that they're going to be super satisfied with that type of man because he does everything they want him to do is not, I wouldn't put my money on that relationship lasting and both parties being satisfied and happy. And I think that's the case for a lot of women. So this is why when we say they're so hypergamous, they're usually saying in a range of areas, they ideally want the man to be at their level or better in some respects. And this is a man who they can learn from, who they can trust in, who they can stop working and still be provided for and be led by. So ideally, if a man is fitting all of those things, he would be the adored.
Yeah.
He would there be if he's all of those things and you're not those things for him, then clearly he's the adored and you're the adorer. You're the one who's wanting to follow after him in his lead. I think that's probably, generally speaking, the healthiest dynamic for sure between men and women. Do I think it's the only dynamic that works? No. I think that there are men who genuinely do want more us being, on equal footing. We're co-partners, we're
I
collaborators, we're
yeah.
co-pilots. And there are men and women that actually have very successful lives and marriages who do that. The problem is there's women who functionally say they want a man who's a leader and takes charge and handles all this stuff, but they're still trying to treat him and condition him to act as if we're here. And there's a problem with that. You're trying to take a square peg and force it into a circle hole where you're trying to take the guy who's better at you than most things and that most women want, and you're trying to treat him as if you two are equals in terms of the relationship dynamic, in terms of expectations. Okay, like your physical biological drive is telling you you want the best of the man you can have, but your mind, your attitude, and your mouth says at best you want to equal, if not a man who actually listens and follows you. So that's actually what I've been noticing is kind of going on, is there's a misalignment with
Mhm.
what it is that they're thinking that they actually want versus what their behaviors are saying. And then their behaviors and what they actually want and their behaviors are not matching, which is causing a lot of conflict in regards to the relationship. And then secondly, with the idea that he proposed about the adored versus adorer dynamic, I actually think that that fluctuates within relationships.
Hmm.
I don't think that it's rigid. I don't think that it's super black and white. I think it depends on the topic. It depends on the area of what each person is skilled at. I think a lot of men kind of do acquiesce naturally to their women's lead when it comes to a lot of stuff happening in the home. She's the nurturer.
Mm.
She's making the
Sure.
house a home. She's putting
Sure.
the children on a schedule and a routine to try to build some type of semblance of a set routine happening in the home and setting the environment. A lot of men want her to do that and even want her to lead in that space. So I think it kind of depends on what the area is in the confines of the relationship to dictate whether or not she's going to be leading in this area or he is. I think the problem is when there's no area in your relationship where you think your spouse is good, helpful, and could even lead to some degree. Now you're teetering on the potential for abuse. You're teetering on the potential
Mm.
for people who are unqualified to lead in a certain area. As a man, even if you're the leader, you're not an expert on everything. So I think that there's room for there to be a little bit more enmeshment in this and a little bit more collaboration on what's the things that she's going to hold down and what's the things that I'm going to hold down. And then the overarching authority at the end of the day, when a decision has to be made and we disagree, who's the one who gets final say? Is it him or is it your emotions?